I'd like to welcome everybody to today's CSOHIMSS Lunch and Learn webinar, which is titled Privacy and Security in Healthcare, What You Need to Know, presented by Mr. John DiMaggio. John is the CEO and co-founder of BlueOrange Compliance. My name is Scott Mash. I'm the CSOHIMSS Chapter Past President and HIE Liaison. I'll be serving as a host today. Just want to let everyone know from the beginning that we do have the handouts posted. Handouts include the CPHIMSS and CAHIMSS CEU form, this introductory slide deck that we're going to run through real quick, and Mr. DiMaggio's slide deck. You can access those through the handouts feature of GoToWebinar. These will also be posted to the CSOHIMSS website here in a day or two, along with a recording of this webinar. So before I turn it over to John, I would like to share some information on the CSOHIMSS chapter. We covered this information. If you would like to get in contact with CSOHIMSS, our webpage you can find at csohio.himsschapter.org. Email addresses are csohio.president@himsschapter.org. That will go to Mr. Jeff Haas, our current president. csohio.info@himsschapter.org will go to a subset of our board members. We are active on social media. We share a lot of information about our upcoming events and Lunch and Learn webinars, and every now and then we'll share a link to either a HIMSS National or something of interest to healthcare IT. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We would like to thank our sponsors, because without our sponsors, we could not provide these Lunch and Learn webinars and our other events that we have throughout the year. Our premier level sponsors are Cover My Meds, Expedient, Ahead, Malwarebytes, Signet Excel, EHR Integration Services. Our elite level sponsors are MetaSource, BlueOrange Compliance, Tech Systems, Obix Perinatal Data Systems, Data Gravity, Redspin, DMI, Time Warner Business Class, NTT Data, Excite Health Partners, Leidos, and Winthrop. Also, some additional elite level sponsors are Centricom, ServiceNow, and Sagacious Consultants. Would like to make you aware of some upcoming CSOHIMSS events. We would like to announce the CSOHIMSS Fall Conference. This will take place on Friday, October 28th, down in Cincinnati, Ohio. This one will be at the Kingsgate Marriott Conference Center at the University of Cincinnati. Right now, what we're looking at is kind of doing a couple, rather than doing a conference focused on a single subject, we're looking at a couple different subjects, a couple different topics, something in finance, something related to MACRA, and something related to project management. We are working diligently to finalize the at least an outline of agenda and some speakers. We've got a few folks lined up already, but we will be sharing some more information on this as it develops. Probably should see something here in the next day or two. Don't forget, HIMSS 17 will be down in Orlando, Florida from February 19th to 23rd, so you can escape the wonderful, unpredictable Ohio winter weather and make a trip down to Orlando. We're thinking about doing another luncheon at HIMSS 17. Traditionally, we've partnered with No HIMSS or another chapter to kind of do something at HIMSS National. We're in discussion about what we're going to do there, but some information along with the date will be coming soon. We've selected the date for the 10th Annual Ohio Healthcare Information Technology Day. This will take place Wednesday, April 5th. At the Ohio State House Atrium. We have not decided on the topic or theme for this event yet, but this is a great event. Rick Moore, who is our advocacy chair, he's ran this event for years and years now. Awesome event. It's really a great time to educate our legislatures about whatever the topic or the theme is. This event is growing every year. Great event. And this is a no-cost event. So, if you want to kind of get your feet wet with CSOHIMSS, this might be the event to start. We've also selected the date for our spring conference. This will take place Friday, May 12th of 2017. Don't know what the topic and theme will be yet, but we will be back at the conference center at OCLC in Dublin, Ohio, where we had our last conference. And we have a couple of Lunch and Learn webinars coming up. Next month, we will hear from Jamie Steck, who is with EHR Integration. They will be talking about EHR conversion and data storage best practices. This is a very timely topic. There are a number of organizations out there that are looking to migrate from one EHR to another for their entire healthcare system, or have acquired private practices that have a multitude of EHRs and now really need to understand what the best practice is for managing those old EHRs or converting data or storing. This presentation is going to cover all that. Great. It's going to be a great topic, very timely. You must pre-register at the link below. You can also find this link on the CSOHIMSS webinar, or I'm sorry, the CSOHIMSS website. In October, the presenter will be Dave Billiter from Signet Excel. Topic of theme will be Ohio, the next generation data sharing network, from results delivery to translational research. Again, this link will be available on the CSOHIMSS website, or actually it is now. November, our presenter is going to be Malwarebytes. They're kicking around a couple topics. They're going to be finalizing this soon. We're probably looking at maybe malware or ransomware or something within that realm. December, Mr. John Flamand from Lockbridge will be presenting how we can enhance our end-user experience, a pragmatic approach to improving provider and clinical end-user log-on times. We selected the dates for the 2017 Lunch and Learn webinars. I'm talking to a couple different speakers right now, but honestly, we love it when our CSOHIMSS members present. So if you've got a project that you've been working on at work, or maybe it's a presentation that you're thinking about doing for HIMSS National and you want to take it for a dry run, we would love for you to be a presenter for our Lunch and Learn webinar. So if you're looking for some presentation experience, or you're pursuing your HIMSS fellow member status and you need those presentation points, this is a good place to get it. So if you are interested in being a speaker, presenter for our Lunch and Learn webinars, please contact me, and we'll get you the documentation that we need to collect the information for the CEUs that we offer, and we'll get you on the schedule. With that, I am going to turn it over to Mr. John DiMaggio. I'm going to unmute John, make John the presenter. John, say hi.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect. Quality's coming through great.
All right. Let me get this started. And okay, can you see it okay, Scott?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is John DiMaggio. We're going to go over privacy and security. It says security, but we're going to talk about privacy too in healthcare and what you need to know. So I'll show you a little bit about me. Coming down here. So this is a little about me. I spent most of my career as a chief information officer in healthcare, and do a lot of work in this area. Do a lot of speaking on this subject, HIMSS, and a lot of long-term care and other organizations as well. A little bit about BlueOrange. This is what we do for a living: privacy and security, security, privacy remediation, etc. So that's a little about us. So agenda today, let me move this out of the way. We're going to talk about privacy and security in perspective, some laws. The OCR Audits have reared their heads here. Talk about cybersecurity, some ransomware, phishing, spear phishing, mitigation, and call to action. So hopefully We'll learn a lot today. So these are some organizational questions I usually start with, and these are questions to ask yourself about your organization. I put a risk analysis. Do you have an active security plan? You kind of see these questions. Have your privacy and breach and all your HIPAA stuff been updated since Omnibus? There were some changes back in 2013. I know it's a long time ago, but a lot of times we see still some outdated policies and procedures. Training is big. I'll talk about training a lot. Do you have a designated privacy and security officer? You need those. Those are federally mandated positions. And have you reviewed the latest OCR audit protocol, which we'll do today? So at the end, these should mean more. So let's talk about the healthcare landscape here. So here we've got healthcare, big push towards electronic in the hospital world. We've been at this since 2010. Meaningful use. Now we're seeing, even the cost shift, take care of people at home, et cetera, keep hospital admissions down, pay for performance, et cetera. And acute care has been at it a while, go through meaningful use. I don't know if any of you have long-term care facilities. Now, some of you may have them. But they're also, you're starting to push information down the long-term care facilities. So they're just getting started on this. They haven't been involved in it, weren't part of high-tech and the stimulus back in 2010. So they're catching up as well. If you look at technology, all great stuff, cloud, everything's connected, smart devices, et cetera. With all that, positive brings challenges, and we'll talk about those. Healthcare is behind other industries, banking, insurance, highly regulated industries that have been at this a while. And the rate that we moved to electronics at a fast rate, sometimes some of the security stuff gets left behind. So we'll talk about that as well. If you're in long-term care is generally kind of behind acute care just because of the Head Start acute care guide. Talk about privacy and security. Slice this another way. Regulations from a HIPAA standpoint. There's privacy regulations, security and breach. We'll talk about those more. Many organizations are enforcing it. We'll talk about OCR. They're doing the audits. CMS and for meaningful use. If you use this information in a fraudulent way or steal it or whatever, the Department of Justice, you get jail time for that. State Attorney Generals are trained also, enforcement, OIG as well. Several threat groups here. Most attention is malicious outsiders, people from the outside trying to get your information. One thing to note, insiders are high risk as well. They have access to information to do their jobs, and you have to make sure that you keep your eye on those folks as well. People make mistakes, human errors, forgot to close off firewalls or do an upgrade, or forget to remove a default admin on a device. So those are risks as well. And environmental security is about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So any environmental things, power outages, et cetera, that put the information availability at risk is also a threat. Kind of risk to your business, audits. If you come out on the wrong end of those are risks. Breach. You see more and more breaches every day, and I think those will continue. These guys are getting smarter. If there is a breach, that could most likely trigger an investigation to look at kind of all your regulatory stuff that you have here. So also, if there's someone in your organization or anybody that comes in, they can file a complaint. Hey, I was at this organization. They don't seem like they're taking care of my privacy, so I'm going to file a complaint. That could also trigger some investigation there. So consequences, we'll talk about this a couple different ways. Fines, penalties. Reputation is probably one of your most valuable assets. So this came out, I think, 2014. Just a general warning from the FBI that the industry is under attack from bad actors, and I think we've seen evidence of that with all the breaches and cyber attacks. So I usually put this slide in because sometimes we have CEOs and CFOs, should we spend money on this? Is it important? The government thinks it's important, or actually they created a law called HIPAA and privacy, so we'll go through that, and security. If you're a business associate out there, clients think it's important. They're protecting, giving you their information. Insurance companies, many of you have cyber insurance, but we'll talk through a cyber insurance application, and they're obviously concerned to see what kind of risk you are. And your patients, and if you're in long-term care residents, they all assume that you're all doing all this stuff. So they think it's important. And then if you don't manage this problem, highly likely that your organization would be involved in a breach at some point. It's just if someone really wants to get in, they'll get in. And the question is when it happens, how are you going to fare? So there's random audits. We'll talk about those. If there's a for-cause audit, if there's a reason for someone to take a look at it, that's another thing. And we all talk about breach, legal, and reputation. So I put these slides in. I know many of you were for hospitals, but some of the smaller practices. Hey, I'm below the radar here. I'm a super small hospital, so no one's going to pay attention to me. So these are several instances of kind of smaller organizations, things like unencrypted thumb drive that can create a $150,000 fine plus corrective action, etc. So these are actually, I got these from the Wall of Shame. HHS has all the breaches that have happened. So these are just a couple instances of small organizations that they really made examples of. So here's fewer than 500 patients, unencrypted laptop, strong message to the industry regardless of size. This is important, $50,000 fine. So this one is fairly recent. This is a business associate that had access to information for nursing homes. This is a unsecured iPhone that had 412 nursing home patients on it. What that did was created an investigation and found out that they didn't do everything they were supposed to. They didn't do a thorough and accurate risk analysis, and they got hit with a $650,000 fine. They took consideration that they were nonprofit, religious, etc. So here's some examples of something as basic as an iPhone getting stolen and what it can cause, trigger an investigation where basically they're going to come in and look under all the rocks there to make sure you're doing what you needed to do. This is a pharmacy that got hit with a $125,000 fine. They're now out of business. So I think, and you read the news frequently, you can see some of these fines, and they're really trying to let everybody know this is very important. So can't talk about privacy and security in healthcare without talking about HIPAA. HIPAA's originally came about to standardize the way that providers and payers talk and standard claims, et cetera. But one of the things was to make the public feel safe about their information. So, you're talking about, the security rule came in to protect electronic information. The privacy rule, who has access to your information under what circumstances, that was changed a little bit in 2013, and then and how information can be shared, et cetera. So that's kind of why, kind of a little background on HIPAA. So these are groups that need to comply. Most of the people on this call, I imagine, are healthcare providers or business associates. So basically, if you provide healthcare services and bill somebody, insurance or Medicaid or Medicare, you are a healthcare provider and covered. So those are covered entities. If you're not in that and you have access to information, there's rules about who business associates can be, but you probably have many business associates in your business if you're a covered entity. Many of you have probably several covered entities in your organization, maybe a hospital, physicians, maybe some home care, etc. Those are different types of covered entities. Depending on your ownership and how you're organized, you have several options of how to organize yourself on top of your business model to help streamline the operations of compliance and sharing policies and procedures and privacy officers, et cetera. So here's some different types down there. That's a whole other topic, but you might want to take a look. Usually it's identified in notice privacy practices, which actually should be on your website. These are fines and penalties, all bad stuff. These things stack up all the way from the top, a willful neglect, which means you haven't done thorough and accurate risk analysis. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Or you don't really have a good handle on where you stand regarding the regulations, all the way down to the bottom of we're doing everything we're supposed to. Something is on the list. We didn't get to it, but it was scheduled for next year, next quarter when we had budget. So the better prepared you are, the lower you fall on this bracket. So that's another reason to be prepared and kind of do everything you need to be doing. Just take a look at this. Give you a second, but the answer is C. So this number keeps going up. Those fines and penalties on the previous page, they can stack up. So a violation per day is actually, so they can all stack up. Add in legal, corrective action, notification, etc. So they're very expensive and can be crippling to an organization. So take a step back. HIPAA, 3 legs of HIPAA, and the subject that we're talking about today. Security came out in 2005, really enforced in 2010. It's protecting electronic information. Before that, everything was mostly on paper, which was then covered by privacy. So the privacy regulations are patient rights, etc., kind of the classic HIPAA from 2003, got an overhaul in 2013. Breach is a separate set of regulations now for breach, notification, mitigation, those types of things. We'll talk about those. And HIPAA is a federal floor. So if your state has any regulations about breach or patient rights, et cetera, and they are more stringent than HIPAA, then those are the regulations you need to follow and need to keep your update your policies and procedures accordingly. So I'm not going to talk about all this stuff, but this gives some idea of the scope of privacy and security. We talked about security. I talked about confidentiality, integrity, availability. HIPAA is broken down into the different types of safeguards: administrative, technical, physical, and organizational. And when we talk about risk analysis, there are several ways to do that. One of the guidances from OCR is to do it using National Institute of Standards on Technology, or NIST. You need to do a thorough and accurate assessment. So on the right are some of the security families for NIST, so a good way to do the analysis. I'm not going to go through all these, but some of these will pop up when we start talking about ransomware, et cetera. Incident response, policies and procedures if there is a security incident. How do you handle that inside your organization? Training is very important. Access control, those types of things. Contingency planning surrounds the availability of information. So those are some of the things that will kind of rear their heads, but that's a list of some of the NST security families. Privacy, patient rights. You should have notice privacy practices. When someone comes and asks for information about someone, there's rules and regulations to go through to see whether they can get it. And under what circumstances, how you can use and disclose information, the differences between them. Training's big, business associates, and these policies and procedures are not just a binder, right? So people need to be trained on them, and several of these things will say kind of ensure compliance. They ensure compliance by having all the documentation, forms and logs, reports, etc. So if someone came in, we'll talk about that in OCR audits, and wanted documentation of your compliance, you'll be able to show them this, to show them that you're actually following these regulations. Breach regulations, detection, mitigation, notification, those are some of the families there. So some of these things will rear their heads when we talk about ransomware and some other cyber risks. We looked at the last slide. There's a lot of stuff to do there, so maybe I'll just get insurance policies. I don't do any of this stuff. So this is, and if you're hospitals, and kind of larger you get, the longer your form is, but here's some of the questions that are asked on a cyber insurance application. A lot of stuff we just talked about here: mobile device security, business continuity, policies and procedures, etc. So it's not, you really can't hide here, and it's somewhat maybe tempting to go through and answer yes, 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 but there have been several cases where there's been breaches and found out that maybe some of those yeses should have been no's, and they won't pay your claim, which is kind of the worst thing in the world if you paying for insurance and then the claim doesn't get paid for some reason. So that's just a little piece about cyber insurance. OCR audit. So back in 2012, some of you maybe have been involved in that, did audits for a lot of different types of information, more to get information about the state of compliance in healthcare. 2016 ones are underway. There's a new protocol published in 2016. I'll have some examples of that here. Another way that you can get audited is obviously for cause. So there's a reason, there's a breach or incident, whistleblower, complaint. It's another way you can even get, and then they'll be calling it investigations. So a little bit update on the audit process, several letters, 2016 in process. One of the first steps is email verification. So many of you, some of you, may have gotten an email that looks like this, actually, and it's to verify who the contact is in your organization. So here you would get back to them, then they would send you a questionnaire. You have to be careful here. We've had a lot of clients that this kind of gets stuck in their spam, so which isn't a good thing. So you might want to check that. Go through the process. You do a questionnaire, who your business associates are, etc., and then you get into this this audit pool. And to date, the audit pool has been selected. So if you're actually going through one of these first audits, you would know it right now. Covered entities are being audited right now, and business associates that they're getting from the list, the questionnaires of who your business associates are, those will start in the fall. So these are desk audits, so you have 10 days to send requested information. There's several sets of information they're asking for in this round of audits, but as far as the audit protocol, I'll show you where that's located. So that's on their website. If you look at the whole audit protocol, there's 180 audit items. There you can see how they're broken out by the three legs of HIPAA we're talking about. Security, there's 72 items, breach 19, and privacy has a good chunk. And generally, they're structured as, do you have policies and procedures for the item? Are you following? Are you doing the right thing? Do your policies and procedures have all the elements? So if your policy and procedure that covers the regulations, are all those regulatory components in your policy and procedure? And then what I talked about, documentation. So not only do you have a book, but you actually proof that you're actually following it. So it's a pretty stringent protocol, and if you're don't have all the stuff in place and really following it, it's tough to survive one of these things. I'm not going to go through these in general. We took the audit protocol and kind of put it in an Excel model, and here you can see some samples of security, the risk analysis, risk management process. You can see it has established performance criteria and the audit inquiry. So a good exercise is kind of go through each of these things and see if your organization has these things in place. So that's a security one. You just have the decks. You can go through these. Here's a privacy, some privacy examples, and breach examples as well. So this is the protocol. It's nice because you kind of know what's on the test. They're taking actually a subset of this in this first round of desk audits, but you'll see kind of more enforcement coming down. If they see real issues, they'll do on-site audits, which will happen. And they'll be doing more and more audit activity as the year and years go on here. So information, actually we have a audit ebook up on our website. You can download it there. The actual audit protocol is located on the HHS website. A lot of good stuff on their website. Here's a couple governance. So you should have a HIPAA security officer, privacy officer. Obviously these don't have to be full-time jobs, but whoever has them, that's who will contact you if there's an issue. So you want to make sure those are clear. And they should have job descriptions for each of these folks and what they do. You should have executive oversight, so this compliance and all this should be a topic on your executive agenda, at least someplace. Your board of directors, if they're not asking you how well the organization is doing in this area, they should be. So this actually should be, your board should be aware of your status of this and your plans for process improvement if you have that. Risk analysis. So you saw in several of the wall of shame things. That's one of the things that pops up. So it's required by the HIPAA regulations. It has to be thorough and accurate and assess all the required areas and perform regularly. The thorough is something that is somewhat subjective. That's something where if you do it on a spreadsheet and do it your way, or even the tool on the HHS website is more geared towards smaller organizations. So it's good to use one of the methodologies, and this methodology, et cetera, to prove it's thorough. Not just because you have one doesn't mean it meets the criteria. So that's just some word of advice on the risk analysis. These are some considerations. If you can have, again, the binder, policies, and procedures need to be communicated and understood. One of your weakest links in your organization is employees, especially ones that are not trained, right? So the new folks, and if they're not communicating with all these risks and what they need to do and policies and procedures, is a problem. Business associate agreements, you probably have many business associates. Sometimes it's tempting. Hey, I'm just going to get a BA, they signed it, I'm done. You should have a list of those, and you should constantly be reviewing them to see whether they're still active, the type of information you're sharing, and have a strategy to do some due diligence on them. We're seeing more and more vendors are getting questionnaires about their security status and are they doing all this stuff, so you'll see more and more of that as people want to make sure that people are doing business with are protecting information. And compliance is a journey, not a destination, so you got to keep at it. So now we're going to kind of switch gears to cybersecurity. So we're going to talk about hacking and then some of the ransomware and phishing and all that good stuff that's happening out there. So general hacking stages is there's a reconnaissance stage. We're kind of casing the place out. And I'll give some examples of this. Scanning, actually testing the perimeter. Want to get in, have access, and once you're in, you want to stay in without being detected and then clear your tracks. So when you get out, no one can know who you are. So why do people do this? Money, obviously we're seeing that in ransomware. If they're stealing the information, selling it, those are good reasons. The information out there, your EPHI is it's magnitudes more valuable than credit card information. Someone steals your credit card, that's one piece of information that can be canceled. Someone steals all has your health record, that can actually be you. So they have all the information, mother's maiden name, etc. Probably enough information in there to open up bank accounts, etc. and bill fraudulently. So there's a lot of value in that information. So money's a big factor. Fun. There's a recent breach nearby in Columbus. Someone just did it and posted all the information up on Google Drives just for fun, that looked like. So people want to see how far they can get. Social political cause, hacktivists that do things for a political reason. And information. So EPHI isn't your only information. You have client lists and intellectual property, etc. So those are other corporate espionage, etc. So those are the motivators. So now I'm going to do an analogy of if someone were to try to break into your house or your organization, let you know how this works. So reconnaissance, someone wants to break into your house, they might see that you leave for work at 8 o'clock and come back at 5 o'clock. If there are certain hours, they might look to see how much your house is worth, or look on Facebook and you tell everybody you're on vacation for 2 weeks and somebody, please get my mail. It's another good sign. Your organization, there's a tremendous amount of information about your organization out there on LinkedIn. Your employees are on LinkedIn. A lot of times they'll talk about what technologies they're using, etc. A lot of information on Google, SEC filings, your website. You want to let people know as much information as possible on your website, so sometimes that's good and that's bad. So if someone does some reconnaissance, they case out your organization that way. Scanning, if someone's going to break into somebody's house, I'm going to go and check the doors. Are the doors locked? Windows locked? Maybe try some garage codes. Actually, trying to do the technical scanning ports, etc., is actually illegal unless you have their permission. So on your organization side, they might start scanning your website, scanning your external address, see if you have any vulnerabilities. Maybe call and say, hey, this is Fred. I'm with the your technical provider. I'm trying to just verify your username and password. It's amazing how much information some people give out on the phone. Or someone try to walk in your organization, see how far they can walk around, right? So those are scanning. Once you're in, okay, I know your windows are not locked because I just test them. I'm going to go in there. Getting an organization. Phishing, clicking on links, malware, social engineering, again, to gain credentials. So now I'm in. And if I'm in your house, I want to be able to come back, so maybe I find a spare key or add a secret garage code door. They're going to try to find ways to get in and stay in, maybe creating a fake user, etc. And then you want to be coming back and back, so I'm going to remove all my fingerprints. And technical world, you want to clear out your audit log so there's no trace of you. So that's just an analogy of how hackers, how they think, and some basic processes of how they do their thing. A little about social engineering now. So phishing, spear phishing, and whaling, we're going to talk about each of these things. This is ways for people to get your information, exploiting the weaknesses of humans. So phishing and spear phishing. So phishing is usually a broad-based thing. So if I send out 10,000 phishing emails, I'm going to get 100 people that bite on it. So if you've seen some of these of, hey, your Walmart order is ready, or your FedEx tracking number is here, that type of thing, usually it's something of value, and trying to click on it, not really targeted at any particular organization. Spear phishing is where a lot of this, the breaches are happening right now. They case out your organization through reconnaissance and scanning, and the successful ones have really, they may target some IT folks or some executives, people who think that have the keys to the organization, trick them into doing this stuff, and then once they're in with those credentials and they have kind of the run of the place. We've done some penetration testing, did some spear phishing, and you'd be surprised at how many people kind of fork over their credentials, saying it's an email from the help desk or something like that. And once you get the right credentials from the right people, then you can kind of go throughout the organization, see what you have access to, et cetera. So these are kind of targeted. They might be from a vendor you do business with. They might be from the pretend from the help desk or CFO. There's signs. There's usually signs for that. Although they're getting better and better at protecting, at disguising those. So that's a real trouble item right now. Whaling is a little bit different. So that's going to go after your C-level suite. Several organizations that have gone through this where the CEO says, hey, I'm out of the office, I won't be checking email. So they go after the CFO and say, hey, we're this organization, I know you're going to do this acquisition, and they need $300,000 wired today, or the deal is going to fall through. Not following policies and procedures about, they need actual sign-offs for this. A lot of times that money is wired. So that's real, they have real knowledge of your organization, who your vendors are, maybe what transactions you're working on right now. But there is a sense of urgency and they want to do it quickly, and that's there's a lot of those out there. Security awareness training all the way down from your C-level folks. Don't click on things, follow your policies and procedures. And that's usually where some of these organizations get caught up. Ransomware. Okay, I spent a lot of time on this. So ransomware, the frequency is going up and up. They're getting smarter and smarter. Ransomware is malware, which is bad software. You can click on an infected ad or file. There's several different variations of it. It will encrypt every kind of file you have access to. So whether it's on your hard drive, you have access to a shared drive, and kind of proliferate its way through your organization and anything that it can access to. So usually there's a ransom demanded for a key to do that. Usually no data is stolen, so that's a little star there, because this is a quote security incident. You need to do a breach analysis and some forensics to determine the strain of it and determine if any information was gone. So usually it's about getting money to give you the key back, but there's a whole process you need to go through to determine that. And that's why I brought up incident response and breach policies and procedures and doing the risk analysis, those types of things. Those are all things that that come into play in a ransomware attack here. So countermeasures, always educate your staff on what to do, how to spot these things. If there is an attack going on, how to notice that there's something wrong, high CPU usage, etc. The HHS has a great guidance on this. There's a link down there This is actually a blog, and it actually has a link to a fact sheet. So there's a lot of information there about ransomware. But there's a lot of post-incident stuff you have to do as far as responses, and this is where all this stuff comes into play. So it's not a good idea to try to create all this stuff when something bad happens. So being prepared, and even doing a tabletop exercise of, hey, let's pretend ransomware happened. What am I going to do, right? One of the big things that we know organizations that successfully recover from this is your backups. So if you have a solid backup strategy and you can kind of cut those off, bring those back in an easy way, that will minimize the damage and let you get access to your information. Lowest system privileges, another part of access control that we talked about. So your users there, if there is an admin that's out there, they should usually be operating as a regular user and just elevate to admin privileges when they need to. So the more and more system administrators or administrators of the machines out there, the bigger problems you have. Stuff can get installed in there. And if you, one of the things is least privilege too. So you only want to give your users access to only the information they need to do their job and nothing more. So if you do that, again, you can contain access that people have to the information, and the damage is less. Mitigation. So risk analysis, that's super important. You need to do it regularly. You usually learn things about your organization, either your policies and procedures, technical information, etc., and it is required, and that's one of the first things that will be asked of your organization if there is an issue, and it's got to be good, and it's got to be current. Vulnerability scanning is another good thing to do. Technical process where you scan your external IPs to see if there's any holes there or open ports, etc. Internal, you can scan your devices and printers, workstations, etc. Determine if your software is out of date. You have any default credentials, admin. We see that frequently. Firmware that's out of date on disk drives, etc. Those are all have known vulnerabilities and are open for attack. If you have any web apps out there, while you have maybe portals and things like that, do some web application testing to see if those web apps are secure and whether they're prone for SQL injections, which is a way for to get access inside these applications. Penetration tests is a good idea. That's paying a good guy to see how far a bad guy can get, and usually a lot of information comes out there. We've done some that we did some password sniffing and got credentials of system admins in a very short period of time by kind of password hacking and stuff. So usually it gives you a lot of information about your organization, gives you a list of things to correct, and then try it again. Policies and procedures, I can't talk enough about those. Very important. You can be doing all the best things in the world, and if something happens, they're going to ask you for policies and procedures. If it's not written down, people aren't trained on it, you're not doing it. So those are very important. Security awareness, keeping people informed of what they should do, what they shouldn't do, new risks out there. The more eyes on this, the better. Passwords. Okay, so nobody likes passwords, especially your docs. We know that they don't like passwords. They have their way. They wouldn't use any passwords, right? But that is your last line of defense between someone and your information. So there's ways, a lot of ways to crack passwords. Looking over your shoulder. If you have that Post-it note on your computer that has your password, that's not a good idea either. You want to make sure your users don't do that. Going through your trash. People asking you information, pretending to be somebody else, that's a way to get your information. Electronic, there's guessing, default, there's default passwords that maybe haven't been changed. There's processes to go through where you can get look at your network traffic and get hash and bump that up against all known passwords. That's one way to crack them as well. So there's ways to get cracked. There's some mitigation we can do, though, for passwords. So length and complexity, we recommend at least 8 with different types of characters. You want to make sure if there's failed login attempts that you lock their accounts. Forced password changes, nobody likes those. although anywhere between 90 and 120 days is probably a good range to force them. You want to be monitoring all your accounts. If someone is not user account in a certain number of days, you want to deactivate it. And wherever possible, Office 365 has this, some other ones have it out there, use two-factor authentication, where it's going to go to an app or something, so you put a password in, there's verification with something that you know, your password, and something that you have, a phone or an app or some type of device. So that's another good way to protect your information. Encryption, we saw a lot of those breaches with lost thumb drive, laptops, iPhones. Protecting that information at rest is very important. Has to be encrypted in transit as well. Technically, encryption is addressable in HIPAA, but if you're not going to use it, you have to come up with a pretty good reason why what you're doing is just as good. So encryption is recommended. I know a lot of folks are encrypting laptops and mobile devices out there. However, several incidents of actually people breaking into physician offices, et cetera, and stealing the whole desktop or server, whatever they have there. So encrypting information even at the desktop level is a really good idea. Also of note here, if your device is encrypted, that just works if someone were to get your hard drive out and try to decipher what's on there. If your username and login and password is actually on a sticky note on your machine and someone gets in and has access to it, encryption goes out the window because they have access to your information. So the encryption only works at rest if you were actually to take a hard drive out and lose a device. So that's just something I want to make sure everybody understands. We just today we came out with a cybersecurity ebook that's on our website too. It's got a lot of this information in it for additional information. Physical security is very important. So you would pick this up in your risk analysis when you're looking at all the physical controls. So are all your wiring closets behind locked doors? Some of your screen locks, the time that those timeouts are driven by your workflow. So if those are out in the open, you want shorter screen lock times than something that's behind an office door. Your data center should be locked. No one should be entering there without, if there's a visitor being escorted, etc. Visitor management is extremely important. Just because someone's walking around your organization with a tie and clipboard doesn't mean they're supposed to be there, right? So educating your staff, if there's somebody that you don't recognize or doesn't have a visitor badge, etc., ask who they are. That's a lot of times very easy to kind of walk around unnoticed because you look important. And that all comes down to training staff on all the things we just talked about. And if someone looks suspicious, nothing wrong with asking somebody who they are versus having somebody that's kind of has a run on the place. So, call to action. Assess your stuff. This is kind of a constant cycle here. Thorough and accurate risk analysis. You have to have a security plan. So you can't have a risk analysis, have it sit on the shelf and not do anything about it. You have to have a plan. You have to show progress. You have to show that it's being managed. Those are the two first things that will be looked at. You need to start fixing stuff as fast as you can. Go to high priority stuff, maybe low-hanging fruit first, and then keep at it because things change. Technology changes, risks change, your environment changes, maybe acquire businesses, etc. So it's a constant process. Test stuff. Good idea to do vulnerability scans, internal and external. Test your web app. Do penetration tests. If you haven't had a penetration test done, you can start out pretty basic. Usually there's a lot of information there. Go and fix it, and then try to get in. That type of thing. Train your workforce. There's some required training for privacy and security that your entire workforce needs to know. Your IT folks can actually get trained at a higher level. The more eyes on this problem, the better in all organizations. And this, if you're on the IT side, and since this is HIMSS, I imagine most of you are, this is not really your problem, right? This isn't an IT thing. This is a company risk management problem. So when you're going through your talk to your executives, there's you can do this or you can don't do it. Question is what happens when you don't do it. So they need to understand the risks and what happens if you don't do it. And there's many organizations, there's budgets that deal with risk management, so you shouldn't really have to go without servers to actually do a good job and solve this problem. But it does take effort, does take kind of guidance, so it's something that needs to get done, but it's not something that is usually very easy to do well. Privacy and breach, we work with a lot of organizations. A lot of folks haven't really looked at this in a while. Good idea to evaluate your policies and procedures, how you're organized from a HIPAA entity standpoint. Many times organizations kind of grow and stuff, and they're not operating efficiently from a HIPAA standpoint. Business line regulations, nursing homes have a little bit different than home care and hospice, et cetera. So your business lines, look at those, make sure that they are specific on their policies to their business. Look at your state regulations. Look at your operations, who's doing what. If someone comes in and asks someone for your health record, who are they going to, making sure all this stuff is working to the policy and procedure. Okay, so now we're back to where we started. So hopefully these questions will make more sense. We talked about the risk analysis, the security plan, policies and procedures. They need to be up to date, different designation, and we walked through the OCR audit protocol. So that, and thank you. So that is all I have. So now we can open up to questions. I'll turn it over to Scott.
All right, I'm pulling up the questions. We do have one question. It's many times a security review or a implementation, because of its size, doesn't seem to get off the starting gate. And so it's important to get an early win. For organizations that are kind of stuck at the beginning and just can't seem to get the ball rolling, what do you see as the low-hanging fruit, and where can folks get an early win to get momentum for the completion of a full security analysis?
Well, when you do the analysis, we usually find that it's a lot of organizations are doing the right thing, but there's no policy procedure around it. So an easy win is having a good set of policies and procedures. If you have those, a lot of it is just elbow grease, kind of going through them, understanding them, educating the organization on them, adopting them, agreeing upon them. A lot of times it needs some management approval, etc. Not very costly, but those are kind of the easy things versus investing, CapEx in encryption or one of those types of things. That's at least a good win. It gets you kind of the ball down the field quickly, and it takes, it's not super easy, but it doesn't usually take a lot of capital and expense, because that's usually one of the issues. It's the people that are doing this right now, you're on the phone, are busy running their business. You're putting out fires, and not your full-time job. So time, not knowing where to start, what's important, right? That's another issue, and money, right? So where does it fit in the budget? So that's what we help organizations like that, right? Of just organizing what's first, priorities, etc. But the policies and procedures are usually the things that take time and not money. So those would be things that kind of kick the ball down the field fastest. So that's usually a low-hanging fruit that we point out, and then we kind of help them with policies and procedures. So that's my recommendation there.
Okay, next question is, how many years does the OCR go back to review risk assessments?
That is a good question. The enforcement really started in 2010. From a CMS standpoint, that was one of the items in meaningful use, so they could go back as far as meaningful use. I'll get an answer on that. I'll say at least to 2010, I would think, for that. You'll see a lot of the in the wall of shame. There's a lot of breaches from 2011, et cetera. And for meaningful use, you've had to have assessments done throughout the process. So I'm going to say 2010 right now, but that's a good question. Now, Scott, I'll get you that answer.
Yeah, I think it is 7 years. If it follows a meaningful use standard, it's 7 years. So, John, that's our last question, buddy. I really appreciate you taking the time to provide the CSOHIMSS members and attendees with the webinar today. Great job, great topic, very timely, especially with the large number of ransomware incidents and HIPAA incidents, the very high dollar HIPAA incidents that we've been reading about in some of the trade magazines. So much appreciated. Thank you, sir.
And if anybody has any questions you're afraid to ask, there's my email. Send me an email. I'll always tell you what I know. So.
Yep. And if you do have problems with the email address, whatever, I know John personally, so if you have a question, you want me to forward it on to John, by all means, send it to me, and I'll make sure he gets it. But with that, we will end today's webinar. Again, a recording of the webinar will be posted to the CSOHIMSS YouTube page, and there'll be a link from the CSOHIMSS site. So thank you very much for attending, and we hope to see you next month.
Thank you.